Tales of Phantasia was an ambitious and technical marvel for the Super Famicom that spawned a franchise with a dedicated fanbase. The original game had a rocky development, which led the original creators to leave the project midway through to form their own studio, Tri-Ace, which spawned their own JRPG franchise, Star Ocean, which also debuted on the Super Famicom. The remaining developers still at Wolf Team decided to work on the next installment on the Tales series, dropping an entirely new story and cast of characters, separated from the world Phantasia already established. However, with the 5th generation of consoles already having its footing onto the public, Wolf Team and Namco decided to mark the next Tales game onto the Sony PlayStation, already declaring itself as the home of JRPGs, thanks to the likes of Final Fantasy VII being the JRPG at the time. With the likes of Final Fantasy VII being a blockbuster, gave Namco the confidence to release the new Tales of Destiny Stateside, marking the first game in the series to be released outside of Japan, although not confident enough to release it everywhere else. Tales of Destiny was first unveiled at the Tokyo Game Show in 1997, featuring a playable demo of the game, which was then later included in a playable preview disc featured in a Famitsu magazine in November 1997. The demo had some differences, such as prototype sprites for NPCs on the field, now yet similar to Phantasia sprites, using the official artwork as opposed to the ones we got in the final version, cutting a lot of the story portions of the beginning of the game, and accessing art a lot sooner, giving a taste on what players would expect from the final game. The preview demo also included a live action video of one of the guys, I presume who works for Namco at the time, cosplaying as the main playable protagonist, going around advertising the game to a bunch of people. Rough sketches of the opening were also seen, as well as the conversation sets between a vast range of characters. Due to not understanding Japanese, I have no idea what they're saying, but it's clear that a lot of effort was put into this demo, and clearly the guys making these had fun. The demo was then included along with some other Namco demos in the Japanese release of Ridge Racer Type 4. Famitsu even had exclusive artwork for the game done by famous Japanese artist Suzumu Matsushita, known for creating the Famitsu mascot Nettie the Fox, and the character designs for games such as the Adventure Iron titles and the Ghost and Goblin spin-off Matsumo. This will be an ongoing trend for the other games too, and yikes, some of these look terrifying. Jesus Estelle, what's wrong with your face? The main character designs for the game was done by Mutsumi Inomata, marking her first debut on the Tales series. Her work can be seen in various anime, such as City Hunter, Windara, and Brainpowered, the latter created by Gundam creator Yoshiyuki Tomino. Even before her work on Destiny, she has done artwork for a few video games, mostly only released in Japan. Her artwork is absolutely stunning, and her work on Destiny is phenomenal, with my favourite designs in the game being Leon, Mary, and Ruti. The game was released in December 1997 in Japan and September 1998 in America. I've never played this game before until recently, so what does this game entail? Before we start, I would love to know in the comments below, what is your favourite PlayStation 1 JRPG? For me, that's Final Fantasy IX. I love the customization, turn-based battles, music, and the cast of characters.
君はもう一人じゃない。運命の扉が今開く。PlayStation Tales of Destiny。
PlayStation。
Tales of Destiny starts out with our main hero Stan being discovered by crewmates on a ship Stan has stuck onto. He is then beaten up and forced to do some chores until a horde of monsters invade the ship. During the raid, Stan discovers a magical quartered sword named Dimnos. Everyone on the ship dies with the exception of our hero and the sword, who escape into a pod. He then wakes up in a cabin and is saved by a man named Gar, who is aware of Dimnos being a sentient sword. Stan and Gar go their separate ways for a moment, and then Stan encounters Mary and Ruti, who were assigned to retrieve a valuable item for some rich dude. Ruti also has a magical quartered sword named Irate, and mentioned that they are known as Swordians, who were once legendary warriors who fought in the Ether Wars ages ago, and now have their spirit into these weapons, choosing their master. Not too long afterwards, Stan, Mary, and Ruti are arrested by soldiers after using a fight with their captain Leon, who also wields a Swordian. Due to wielding these magical swords, the three are to assist Leon in finding the Eye of Atamoni. a deadly tool that can destroy the world, and the rest unfolds later on. There isn't a whole lot to say on Destiny's story. Compared to the last day in Fantasia, where I was at least hooked right from the start, Destiny's plot felt underwhelming. Despite my issues with Douse in Fantasia, I will say he at least had a visual presence throughout the campaign, being the motivation for the party on a personal level to stop him. Destiny has multiple villains, but are completely forgettable. I even had to look up my footage again, as I forgot who the group was supposed to be chasing in the first half of the game. And I will most likely forget his name again after making this video. Some of the twists that happened throughout the game felt like they came out of nowhere. The main casts aren't any better. Instead of the Super Famicom version of Fantasia's party of 5, there are 9 playable characters to choose from, but I couldn't tell you a whole lot about them. The main protagonist, Stan, is your standard kind-hearted protagonist, who seeks adventure, waiting on his swordsmanship, but the only thing that stuck out to me is that he was the punching bag for a couple of characters in the group. There were a couple of characters I like Ruti, a thief who has money on her mind, and probably got the most chuckles out of me. Leon was alright too, having probably the most development out of any character in the game, but after hearing the hype around him, going as far as being declared as one of the best male characters in the official Tales popularity polls, I was yet disappointed. No, I expect his popularity mostly came from the PlayStation 2 remake, where some of the characters had some rewrites, and the Japanese version of the original game, where they had more character development. Unlike my Fantasia video, I won't talk much about the PS2 remake here. The sword units are extremely forgettable too, having next to no personality, besides Dimnos, who has the most dialogue out of the group. The Japanese version of the game included party interactions when in the overworld, making it the first Tales game to include sticks, which I assume is where most of the character development comes from.
この景色、じっちゃんやリリスに見せてやりたいな。
なんだかんだ言っても、結局妹が可愛いんじゃないの。
なんだよ、悪いかよ。
別に麗しい兄弟愛じゃない。
そんなんじゃないって。
まったく、素直じゃないんだから。
When the game was found stateside, the sticks feature was removed entirely due to the game being voiced only in Japanese with no subtitles, so it would have felt pointless to put it in without having the translators putting in a lot of effort into them, and I don't think they had the time or budget for that. The dialogue for these sticks can be accessed through the sound test, but unless if you understand Japanese, you wouldn't know what they would be saying.
許さないぞグレバム。
感情的になるな、このバカ者が。こういう時こそ冷静にならなくてどうする。
そんなことお前に言われなくったって。
心配するな。奴に明日は来ない。ここで型をつけてやる。
It's a shame because if we got them in some way, even with a bad English dub, I feel I would have had a better chance to like the cast more. Not only were the sticks removed, but the opening song sung by the Japanese band Dean was also removed in favour of a standard score and some sound effects through the animation done by Production IG, which was thankfully still intact. However, when Destiny came out on the PlayStation, we've already seen plenty of 3D games on home consoles, so Destiny's 2D sprites probably didn't get impressive back then, especially compared to the other JRPGs that came out around the same time frame, and even more so when you realise that Final Fantasy VII came out a year before Destiny Stateside. Even compared to Fantasia, the visuals weren't that much of an improvement. Destiny did have some 3D polygons, but it's very minimal, only used for the world map. That was nearly 30 years ago, however, so games that were judged for sticking with 2D sprites by critics are now considered timeless. So, sitting it now in this current year, I'll say Destiny looks fine. I like the look of the chibi style sprites in battle and on the world map. If you leave the game idle while on the world map, you can see characters do their own thing, which is pretty cute. While the visuals aren't much of an improvement, the combat certainly is. Instead of the main character being the only melee fighter, everyone can be a melee fighter, which makes battles less frustrating. There are a total of 9 playable characters, which is a lot, but you can only have 6 in the party and 4 in battle. Half of the playable characters are mandatory in the story who are able to cast magic, and unlike Fantasia, where high level magic takes forever to finish the animations, the casting animation is a bit shorter. High level magic still pauses the fight, but I didn't find it as irritating, because the spell casters have other offensive options, making me see less of the same spells over and over again. Half of the playable characters can equip discs, which can be found throughout the adventure, and can let them cast different kinds of spells they wouldn't know. By default, Stan with Dimness can only use fire spells, but can find discs that can make them cast spells like Grave and Thunderblade. However, discs aren't the only way for certain characters to cast spells, as you can swap Swordians with other party members, so you can swap Stan's default weapon and can cast spells Ruti would normally use. It might be fun to experiment with, but I never swap them around often. Since you can only play as Stan in single player, I hardly use the spells besides the odd boss or two. The other half can be found in the overworld during the latter half of the game and are entirely optional. You do have the chance to play as a couple of them during moments in the story to give you a taste of what they can do. However, I didn't particularly use the other characters in my team much because the optional party members lacked magic. The only exception was Mary, who is with you throughout most of the first part of the game and appears before some of the mandatory characters. While you have 9 characters to choose from, you can only play as Stan if you are playing alone, and like the PlayStation version of Fantasia, you can only play multiplayer if you have a multi-tap accessory and equipped channel rings, which are limited and missable. Unlike my playthrough of Fantasia, I played by myself, so I cannot judge the other characters properly. No, I will say Guy is a useful support due to his bows and arrows, attacking from afar, and is the only character I chose not to have his swordian equipped. Chelsea also wields a bow and arrow too, but I never recruited her in my playthrough. Destiny, however, despite having a lot of customization options, I found the game to be incredibly easy to a fault. Unlike Fantasia, which had a lot of frustrating bosses, I never died once in Destiny, which makes Destiny easier to play, but at the same time was quite boring, which depends on who you ask, is either better or worse. The only challenge I had in this game was traversing through the optional dungeon inspired by the NAMCO arcade game Karo Draga, which has about 100 floors of navigating through mazes and fighting enemies from those games, and even then I'd stopped playing through this optional dungeon due to how long and tedious it was. While I think Destiny is better than the Super Famicom version of Fantasia, I found the game to be painfully mediocre. It is an incredibly easy game to a fault, and it has a forgettable story and cast of characters. I know there is a remake of this game, but at the moment I want to judge this game by itself. While Destiny was a mediocre experience, it did introduce things that became a staple for the franchise, like being able to move freely with the manual option, and arts not being tied to distance, but instead the direction you pick when you press the art button. It is a stepping stone of what's to come. This game could work so that future games could run. I think I would only recommend this one if you are like me and like going through a series in release order and see how the series evolves over time, or if you are a big Chaos fan. For anyone else, I think you can skip this. If you play this version of the game, let me know what you think of it, and whether or not you agree or disagree with me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great day.